Anglers hate missing bites, especially on days when a bite is hard to come by anyway. Oh, there's one. Oh, he came off. Oh. We're going to take a look underwater at something that happens a lot when bass go to eat our lures that we need to visually understand so we can put into practice some tips that can help us land more fish more often. Now, all fish, including bass, go through an instinctual checklist before deciding if food is, well, actually food. And of course, this involves their senses. First comes the actual attention-getting process. This could be something falling through the water column, vibration, water displacement, or other factors. But once this happens, bass, being very visual creatures, try to locate this potential prey with their sight. If it checks the box of visually looking like a potential meal, then they will continue with the process. And this is where they will often approach very closely and then inhale their prey. If the potential prey they inhaled tastes like food or feels like food, then the bass will start to reposition the prey for the optimum position to swallow it. We'll look at that in a second. But first I wanted to show you some more prey testing, this time with sunfish, to help us get a better idea of how long this window of opportunity to set the hook may or may not last. I dropped a small pebble into the water, and of course, being super curious, this sunfish immediately checked it out and felt it looked enough like food to try it. But after a few seconds of manipulating this little pebble in its mouth, the sunfish spits it out. You've probably watched something similar happen to your artificial lures when lots of panfish are around. Sometimes they may eat up that little plastic morsel, but other times they do some extensive testing with their mouth and then leave it and move on. Now, let's look at this footage of a bass eating a plastic worm. Now, I've shown you this footage before, but I wanted to time it and give us an idea of how long it takes before that bass has the worm and hook positioned in its mouth to get a hook set that is not a swing and a miss. It takes roughly 3 seconds for this fish to fully get that bait so it can actually be caught. The mistake we often make as anglers is not to give the bass enough time to position the lure. We will swing away and pull the lure away from the fish too soon. Now, of course, something like a more compact offering can greatly help this problem. Now, a longer lure, like the 6-inch worm I'm using here, can sometimes take several bites or manipulations by the bass to get it ready to eat. And it is with these longer lures, and remember, this one's only 6 inches, that we have to be mentally prepared for this. So what are some things we can actually do to help with this waiting just a split second longer? Well, first, for me, I find that when fishing bottom bouncing lures, I do better with my hook sets when using a consistent dragging retrieve. The line has less slack in it, and I can feel sooner when a bass is mouthing the lure or playing around with it. Second, I have helped my hookup ratio tremendously on my finesse offerings by using a high-vis braid to leader connection. That visual benefit of the high-vis braid lets me see the smallest twitches and movements even before I sometimes feel them. And if you see the line moving consistently to the side, which doesn't always happen, but if you see that, you know the bass will most likely have the lure good enough for you to set the hook. And the third thing anglers can do when using ultra sharp hooks is to master the difference between a steady pressure hook set and a power hook set. For most lures that have a single hook, unless the bait is buried deep in grass or other cover, a side sweep that maintains pressure is going to land more fish. There are times when we get too excited on our hook sets and literally rip the lure right out of the fish's mouth. Now, like I said, there are situations where the powerful hook set is needed for sure. But in many, many situations, the steady pressure instead of a sudden jolt will be all it takes. Now keep that footage in mind of how that bass repositioned the lure multiple times in its mouth, and I think it will help your hook sets if you're missing a lot of fish. And hey, if you want to watch a video that goes over what I think is the best possible rig, how we can adjust our Neko rigs to even be more efficient when fishing things like vegetation, go ahead and check this one out right here. And make sure that you go out and encourage someone today. You never know how you might just change their life. For the Bass Fishing Life, I'm your host, Steve Rogers.